Acheron, one of the most strongest character Honkai Star Rail ever released. She has been in the meta since her release at 2.1, and now she is still one of the most used characters in the game. And even more, she is now going to get another rerun soon in the incoming patch 3.2. But here comes the problem. As you know, Honkai Star Rail suffers a lot from the HP inflation, and also those new incoming DPS characters, they have such higher multipliers. Those fancy characters like the Herta, Aglaya, Mayday, and now the incoming Pastris. So the problem now is Acheron still worth ruling? And is she still relevant in the meta? But how can we answer this question? Sure, we can check the tier list or we can see the gameplays by the other players. But it may not be granular enough. What if Acheron doesn't have Geoshu? What if Acheron doesn't have her light cone? Would that matters? But don't get me wrong, Raiden's tier list is actually one of the most reliable one you can find for Honkai Star Rail, because they actually collect players' data and they use this data to re-evaluate their tier list every time the endgame content resets. And do you know what's better? They even open source the data for us to use too. These data are collected and compiled nicely by the data collector of Raiden Institute, LvlUrArti. He takes a lot of time and effort to collect and compile this data for us to use, and we're going to use this data for our analysis. You can check his data in his GitHub repository. Links in the description below. Massive shout out to him. But there is one little problem in tackling this data. If you go into the game interface, you can see that for Apocalyptic Shadow and Pure Fiction, the game displays the score separately for each room. But that's not the case for Memory of Chaos. For MOC, the game only shows the final cycle used by both of the teams combined. So we do not know how many cycles Acheron used and how many does the other team use. And that's why this analysis is gonna be solely based on AS and PF only. And well, here is the results. First, I would like to lay down some disclaimers. Results that I'm going to show you exclude these two types of Acheron team. For the first one, Acheron paired with Dot team, because these are another archetype of team, and sometimes there are buffs that isn't Dots but not for Acheron. And another type of team, the Stainless team, because these type of teams are usually well calculated and it might become outlier. Also, it might not be applicable for normal players. Okay, now let's take a look at Apocalyptic Shadow side first. If we take a look at the graph during her initial period, you can see that in reality, Acheron didn't perform as well as we expected. Well, we can say that the part of it comes from the bosses are not suitable for Acheron. Let's talk about the bosses during that time. For the first Apocalyptic Shadow in 2.3, the boss is Kokolia. And you know what Kokolia comes with? Part and his bulky shield. So Acheron gonna need a lot more time to break his shield, thus lowering her AS points. And things get even worse in patch 2.4, because not only the boss doesn't have thunder weakness at all for both of them, the buff provided during that time have none related to ultimate. They only have break effects for 5 fly and those follow attacks. So Acheron have another hard time during patch 2.4. Then Geoshu comes. Geoshu is exactly what Acheron needs. And for the first time, Acheron can achieve average points higher than 3.3k with Geoshu's help. But from the graph, you can see two concerning things. For the first one, in order for Acheron to achieve that juicy 3.3k points, you're gonna need both her Light Cone and Geoshu. If you lack at least one of them, it's gonna be a really hard time for you. And if you lack both of them, things get even worse than that. And for the second point, if you take a look at the data points starting from 3.x onwards, you can see that even if Acheron have both, her performance starting to drop again. And now in patch 3.1, you can see that Acheron now struggles to get 3.3k, even with help from both of her Lycone and Geoshu. This is quite concerning. And if the boss in the future doesn't have the new weakness or the buff that isn't ultimate at all, Acheron is gonna be in hot water for sure. Well, Acheron's ultimate is AoE, right? So she should at least perform better in pure fiction, right? Turns out that's not the case, because Acheron takes time to charge ultimate, and it's not fast enough to clear these mobs without Geoshu. If we take a look at the graph, you can see that Acheron teams with Geoshu outperforms Acheron without Geoshu, whether she has Lycone or not. When Geoshu comes, it fixes that parts of Acheron directly. Geoshu inflicts debuff on these small mobs and allowing Acheron to charge ultimate really fast. If we take a look at the graph, it stays the same. Acheron teams with Geoshu outperform Acheron team without Geoshu by a significant margin, and Geoshu even allows Acheron to achieve almost full points every time, even with E0. So at least if she is not usable in AS or MOC, she still have her place in pure fiction. But now, I know your next question. Are her Eidolons worth it? Before that, let's give you some background first. If you want to invest into Acheron deeply, go for her E2. And let's take a graph to support this. If you increase her Eidolons from E0 to E1, you can see that the margin doesn't increase that much. But if we increase it again to E2, her performance increased drastically. But let's come to our question first. Why E2? E2 comes with two benefits. For the first one, if you have her E2, each time Acheron gets a turn, she automatically gets another stack of ultimate when the turn starts. She can charge her ultimate even faster, from 2 stacks per turn to 3. But that isn't all. By having E2, the required nihility for her to achieve max stat now reduced to 1. Let's put another support in, and that's even boosts Acheron damage even more. How about in pure fiction? We already know that even E0 Acheron with Geoshu can already get higher than 30k, but increasing her Eidolons to E2 can make things even better. It allows her to perform at even higher points, and sometimes with good plays, she can even achieve 40k. And for E6, it might be a little bit overkill, but if you love Acheron, go for it. So, is E2 Acheron still worth it? From the data that I observed, plus my little bit speculation, if you have Acheron E0 S1 at full team already, it is still a very decent choice. But if you don't, I don't think it's a worthy investment for me, because if you already have her at full team, it will only require 2 gold in order to get from her E0 to E2 with full team. If you don't, it will require at least 5 gold to set E2 S1 Acheron with her full team. And this 5 gold can better be used in investing in the newer DPS and their best in slot. From this graph, you can see that if we tag E2 S1 Acheron along with Geoshu, her performance at the moment is now on par with E0 Deherta and Aglaya, which is sad. But from this data, we can speculate that at least E2 S1 Acheron will be on par as Deherta, and at least she might survive for at least one major patch. So, what do we learn from this data? From analyzing those two graphs, we can see that Acheron heavily relies on Geo Shield. So, if you don't have enough gold for at least 2 gold, I would recommend skipping Acheron for another character. But if you insist on pulling her, I recommend to pull for Acheron first, then pull for Geo Shield. And if you have budget, please also go for her light cone, as it will help her to reach her peak performance. And please do note one thing. From the unbiased opinion after analyzing the data, Acheron might be in hot water soon. So, if you still insist on pulling her, please take your own risks. But if you love her, go for it. At least you can still slash the monster in the map, and that is already utility for me. And that's all for today. If you like this kind of content, please make sure to subscribe. And you can also comment which character that you want me to analyze next in the future. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.